I have a question for you.
Okay.
If you could speak any language perfectly, starting tomorrow, which one?
That's a good question, actually.
I have five more.
Are they all this good?
Some of them are better.
Okay, got it.
Welcome, everyone, to Just Johnny and Sophie. We are so glad you are sitting right here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
So the premise for today's discussion is actually pretty simple, but the answers we got were, well, they were anything but simple.
Oh, boy.
We took this stack of like 5 increasingly deep, if you could, questions, and we posed them not just to each other, but to our core friend group.
Right, the whole crew.
Yeah, we're talking about Marcus, Lily, Dan, and Maya. And the mission today is to really unpack what these hypothetical wishes actually reveal.
Because, I mean, when you ask someone what they wish for, you aren't just getting a fantasy.
No, not at all.
You're getting, like, a map of their true personality, their regrets, their hidden goals. It's an incredibly revealing exercise.
It really is.
Hypotheticals act as this sort of psychological truth serum. They strip away all the practical obstacles of everyday life.
Like a lack of time.
Exactly. The lack of time, the fear of failure, the financial constraints. And when you clear all that away, you see the pure, unadulterated motivation underneath.
Right.
You find out what people actually value when there are zero consequences.
So let's jump right into the deep end with that very first question we mentioned, the magic language pill.
Let's do it.
If you could wake up tomorrow and speak any language perfectly, which one and why? I'll go first, just to set the baseline here.
Okay, lay it on me.
Portuguese. Without a second thought. To me, it is the most melodic, percussive language on earth. It literally sounds like music.
It really does have a beautiful rhythm to it.
Right. Plus, I've always wanted to travel extensively through Brazil and Portugal, and I just want to experience those cultures without the filter of translation,
Yeah, I can completely see that for you. It's an aesthetic choice combined with a very specific cultural wanderlust.
Yeah, exactly.
You're chasing a feeling. Now, for me, the answer is Japanese.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I have wanted to visit Japan for years,
Yeah.
specifically to immerse myself in that jarring contrast between the hyper-modern cities and the ancient rural traditions.
Oh, that makes total sense.
And linguistically, the structure just fascinates me.
How so?
Well, the levels of formality, right? The way social context dictates the literal meaning of a sentence. It's a totally different way of organizing reality.
Wow.
It literally forces your brain to categorize human relationships differently.
Okay, so that's us. Aesthetic, beautiful, travel-focused. We are basically just romantics.
Basically, yeah.
But when we threw this into the group chat with the friends, the answers were wildly different. Let's start with Marcus.
Oh, Marcus.
Marcus chose Spanish. Why? Because, quote, it's everywhere. He already speaks a little bit, and he just wants to be fluent.
Which is so war.
Which, if you know Marcus, is the most incredibly perfectly Marcus answer possible.
Yeah. It really is. Marcus is the ultimate pragmatist. For him, a language isn't a culture, it's an asset.
Yeah, it's a pure efficiency equation for him.
Exactly. If he is going to invest neurological energy into a skill, he wants to know what yields the highest return on investment.
Right.
Spanish is spoken by hundreds of millions of people globally, so therefore Spanish is the logical, scalable choice. He wants a master key to as many doors as possible.
Totally. But then we have Lily. And, we all have a Lily in our lives, right? The person who optimizes their hobbies.
Oh, absolutely.
Lily somehow managed to out-practical Marcus.
Which is hard to do.
It is. She chose Mandarin. But she didn't just casually text us her answer. She literally built a spreadsheet.
I still can't believe that.
A spreadsheet to research which language would be the most mathematically useful for the next 50 years of global economics.
Unbelievable.
I'm talking columns for GDP growth, phonetic difficulty, and, time zone alignment. A spreadsheet for a hypothetical question.
That is the ultimate Lily move right there. She took a fantasy, a magical scenario that defies the laws of physics, and she optimized it.
She totally did. But then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have Maya.
Right, Maya.
Maya chose Italian. And her reason had zero to do with global economics. She learned some Italian a while ago for a very specific personal reason, and she just wants to finish what she started.
Yeah.
With Maya, it is always Italian. There is this intense, stubborn loyalty to it.
It's very sweet, actually.
It is. And finally, there's Dan.
Dan said Finnish, and nobody saw that coming.
Nobody. And he completely refused to explain his reasons.
Yeah, he just dropped the word Finnish into the chat and essentially ghosted the conversation.
Is he planning to move to Helsinki? Does he
Okay.
just really like heavy metal? We have literally no idea.
No clue.
But looking at this entire group, what's captivating is the massive dichotomy of motivation here. You have the "if I could" phrasing, which invites this grand dreaming, but the dreams are so sharply divided between utility and emotion.
Well, we usually throw around terms like instrumental motivation and integrative motivation to describe this exact divide.
Okay, break that down for us.
So seeing it play out in our friend group makes it really visceral. Lily is operating on pure instrumental logic, right?
Yeah.
Language as a tool, like a hammer.
Right.
Maya is operating on integrative emotion. Language as a way to belong, to connect with the soul of a place.
Okay, let me pause you there, because looking at Lily's data-driven, color-coded approach to Mandarin versus Maya's fiercely loyal attachment to Italian, it makes me wonder if we are fundamentally broken in how we categorize language.
Broken how?
Like, do we treat it as a tool, like going to the hardware store and buying a hammer to fix a shelf? Or do we learn it as an art, like buying a painting because looking at it makes you feel something?
I'd actually challenge that binary, to be honest.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of being broken. I think it's a matter of entry points. Like, Lily isn't wrong for starting with a spreadsheet, and Maya isn't wrong for starting with a feeling. The reality is, even if you buy the language as a hammer, eventually you have to use it to talk to the people who built the house.
well, that's good.
You cannot escape the human element. The tool eventually forces you to engage with the art of conversation.
That's a really fair point.
Yeah.
The fantasy of the magic pill is fun, but it conveniently ignores the grueling toll the actual process takes on you,
Bro, it's exhausting.
which is exactly what we wanted to dig into next. This was the moment in the group chat where the humor kind of dropped out of the room and things got incredibly real.
Yeah, the tone shifted entirely.
We asked everyone, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about learning English, what would it be?
This changes the entire psychological framing.
It really does.
We shift from "if I could," which is an expansive look at the future, to "I wish I had," which is an uncomfortable confrontation with the past. And confronting the past always brings up a little bit of grief, I think. Grief for the time we wasted, or the opportunities we let slip by because we were just too scared.
My answer to my younger self was simply this. I said, start before you feel ready. You will never feel ready.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I spent so much of my life waiting for this magical, mythical moment where I would suddenly have enough vocabulary or like perfect enough grammar to finally step out into the world and speak.
And that moment never comes.
That moment does not exist.
It's a complete illusion. You're waiting for a finish line that just keeps moving. My advice to my younger self was very much in the same vein, actually.
What was it?
I would say, the mistakes are the learnings. Stop being embarrassed by them.
But that embarrassment is so powerful. It's literally paralyzing.
It really is.
Think about it like this. Imagine you are a fully grown adult and you never learned how to ride a bicycle. So you decide to learn.
Okay, terrible idea already, but go on.
Right. But the only way you are allowed to practice is in the middle of a crowded public square.
Oh.
While hundreds of professional native cyclists watch you wobble, fall over, and scrape your knees. That is exactly what trying to speak a new language feels like.
I want to stop you right there because while that is a terrifying image, I think the bicycle analogy actually falls short of explaining the real trauma here.
Oh, how so?
Because falling off a bicycle is just a physical, mechanical failure. You scrape your knee, people might chuckle, but your identity remains intact.
Okay, sure.
Language is completely different. When you are an adult, your entire sense of self, your intellect, your nuance, your humor, your status in a room, it is all deeply tied to your ability to articulate your complex thoughts.
Yes, absolutely.
Language is the primary vehicle for your personality.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. So when you are forced into a new language where your vocabulary is suddenly reduced to that of a toddler, your ego takes a massive, devastating hit.
It really does.
You aren't just making a mechanical mistake.
Yeah.
You feel like you are presenting a lesser, diminished version of yourself to the world. You feel intellectually stripped.
That is profoundly accurate. It isn't just physical clumsiness. It's an identity crisis.
Exactly.
You know you are smart, but the words coming out of your mouth sound incredibly simple, which is why, as you said, Embracing the mistakes is the only way forward.
Yeah, you have to.
The embarrassment isn't a sign that you are failing. It is literally just your ego throwing a tantrum because it has to grow.
Exactly. And the whole point of pushing through that ego death, of surviving that identity crisis, is to eventually get to a place where you can actually connect with other complex minds.
Which brings us to the reward. Once you get past the ego and start making mistakes, you finally unlock the real prize, which is actual human connection.
The best part.
So we asked the group the ultimate communication fantasy. If you could have dinner with anyone who speaks English, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
The answers here were a masterclass in human psychology.
They really were. I kept it somewhat traditional. I said I would want to have dinner with a specific writer I admire, a novelist whose prose just sings. And the funny thing is, I wouldn't even want to ask them about their books. I just want to sit across from them, have a glass of wine, and experience how their mind constructs everyday sentences in real time. I want to see the architecture of their thoughts.
That's fascinating. And I went the historical route. I picked a major scientific figure from the 19th century who completely reshaped our understanding of the natural world.
Naturally.
But I wouldn't want to lecture. I'd want to hear the unedited, unpolished thoughts. Not the published, peer-reviewed papers, but the messy late-night doubts they had over dinner.
Oh, I love that.
The things they were terrified they had gotten wrong, you know?
Both very noble intellectual answers from us. But our friends, once again, took this in wildly different directions.
And of course they did.
Let's look at Marcus. Marcus picked an absolute titan of the modern tech industry, extremely famous. And his reason, he didn't want to talk about philosophy or legacy.
Nope.
He literally just wanted to ask this billionaire about their morning routine and how they structure their calendar.
Pure, unfiltered utility. Even in a fantasy scenario with unlimited access, Marcus is just trying to extract actionable workflow data.
It's astonishing. But then Dan, who earlier gave us the deeply mysterious Finnish answer, picked someone absolutely nobody expected.
Yeah, this was a curveball.
He chose a relatively obscure person who lived through a very quiet, often overlooked moment in history. No fame, no massive achievements. And Dan's reason was surprisingly profound.
It really was.
He just wanted to ask them how they found peace in a chaotic era.
Let's unpack that for a second, because Dan's choice is fascinating. We often look at history and assume people back then had a slower, more grounded existence.
Right.
Dan is clearly looking for an anchor. He's projecting his own modern anxieties onto this historical figure, hoping they have the secret to tranquility.
And then, of course, we have Maya, who flat out refused the premise of the question.
Naturally.
She completely rebelled. She said, I can't pick one, I'm taking 3 people.
So typical.
She demanded a full dinner party with a musician, a chef, and a poet. But looking at this whole range of answers, from Marcus wanting a calendar tip, to Dan seeking historical peace, to Maya hoarding guests, it made me reconsider the entire concept of the dinner party question.
Okay.
I actually want to push back on how we use this hypothetical.
What's your theory?
We always treat this question as if it's an interview about the guest. Like it's a test of who you admire most or who you think is the smartest person in history.
Right. That's the standard interpretation.
But I don't think it is. I think the dinner party question is actually a mirror. It doesn't reflect the guest at all. It reflects the unasked questions we currently have about our own lives.
That's incredibly insightful.
Think about it. Marcus is clearly stressed about his productivity and time management, so his fantasy is to meet a titan of industry to fix his calendar.
Yeah.
Dan is overwhelmed by the noise of modern life and is searching for internal calm, so he summons someone who supposedly found peace.
That tracks.
Maya is hungry for passion and variety, so she demands a table full of artists. The guest isn't the point. It's not about them. It's about what we feel we lack.
In clinical psychology, that's essentially projection.
Really?
Yeah, we project our unresolved internal conflicts or our deepest desires onto external figures who we believe hold the answers. If you want to know what someone is secretly struggling with right now, don't ask them what their problems are.
Just ask them who they want to have dinner with.
Exactly. Ask them and listen closely to the why. The why is always a confession of their own current unmet needs.
Wow. The why is a confession. I absolutely love that.
It really is.
And honestly, if having these rich, complex, revealing conversations at a dinner table is the ultimate goal of learning a language well, it begs a massive, somewhat uncomfortable question about how we train people to get there.
A huge question.
If the destination is human connection, why is the journey so sterile? Which leads us to question 4. If you could change one thing about how English is taught, What would it be?
This is where the theoretical meets the practical. Because the gap between what people actually want from a language and how they are forced to learn it in a classroom is staggering. It's almost tragic.
It really is. My answer was immediate. More real conversations, less grammar out of context.
Yes.
We spend years forcing students to stand at a whiteboard and memorize verb conjugations, but we never teach them the actual mechanics of human interaction.
We completely ignore it.
We don't teach them how to interrupt politely in a meeting or how to use sarcasm or how to show empathy when a friend is hurting.
I completely agree. My change would be more stories, more culture, more reason to care about the language in the first place.
Right.
Language isn't a math problem to be solved. It's a window into how an entirely different culture experiences human existence. If you strip out the culture, the history, and the humor, you kill the motivation to learn.
To put it in perspective, traditional grammar-first education feels like handing someone an incredibly dense 500-page engineering manual for a car.
That's a great way to put it.
You force them to memorize the manual for 4 years. You test them on the friction coefficient of the brake pads. You grade them on the thermal dynamics of the engine. And then, after 4 years of zero practical experience, you hand them the keys, drop them on a busy highway at rush hour, and act surprised when they immediately crash.
Yeah.
Because reading a manual is not driving.
I'd argue it's actually worse than your car analogy.
How could it be worse?
We don't just hand them a manual and let them crash. By reducing a living, breathing language to a set of punitive rules and standardized tests, we actively train the brain to associate the language with anxiety.
Oh, that is so
We
clear.
penalize them for exploring. The education system doesn't just fail to foster a cultural connection. It actively prevents it by making the learner terrified of making a mistake. It takes Maya's beautiful painting and turns it into a highly stressful, weaponized hammer.
A weaponized hammer.
Yeah.
And just to pull the curtain back for you listening right now,
Yeah.
those two answers combine. The need for real conversation and the need for cultural connection.
Yeah.
That is the exact, genuine reason
Yeah.
Just Johnny and Sophie exists in the first place. That is our entire mission statement. Real conversations, real English, every day.
Absolutely.
We want to get you out of the manual and onto the road.
Which perfectly sets up the final question we asked our group. And without a doubt, this was the most emotionally resonant part of the experiment.
It was.
We asked everyone to boil it all down. Describe your English journey in 3 words.
It's a brutal constraint. It forces you to distill years of struggle, embarrassment, triumph, and identity shifts into a tiny container.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But what struck me was how completely different our words were.
What were yours again?
My 3 words were frustrating, expansive, connection.
Walk me through the progression there.
Well, it started with the intense frustration, the feeling of being that toddler in an adult's body, scraping my knees in the public square.
Right.
But eventually, that frustration gave way to something expansive. My world, physically and intellectually, got bigger. The media I could consume, the places I could go. And finally, it landed on connection. The ability to sit at that dinner party and actually understand the people across from me.
That's a beautiful arc. From internal struggle to external connection.
What about yours?
My 3 words were observation, empathy, freedom.
I like it.
Because learning English first forced me into a state of deep observation. I had to watch how people moved, how they used tone, how they structured their arguments.
Right, you had to study them.
Exactly. And that observation naturally bred empathy, because to understand language, you have to try and view the world from the speaker's vantage point.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that empathy granted me freedom, the freedom to navigate anywhere, both geographically and intellectually.
Frustrating, expansive,
Yeah.
connection versus observation, empathy, freedom. Completely different paths, completely different words, but both incredibly true.
Yeah.
And this is where we want to turn the spotlight entirely onto you listening to us right now. You are part of this friend group today. You've heard Marcus, Lily, Dan, Maya, and us. So what are your 3 words?
It's arguably the most distilling, clarifying question you can ask yourself about your own progress. It forces you to define your own narrative.
If this discussion sparked something for you today, if you have 3 words for your journey, or if you know exactly who you'd invite to that dinner party and why we want to hear about it, come find us on Instagram, pick one of the questions, and share your answer with us. And please hit subscribe so we can keep asking these questions together.
Because the hypothetical questions never really end, do
You
they?
don't. Oh, and before we wrap up, I have a quick tease for what's coming up on the show. Monday, Maya had a week.
Oh, she really did.
Not one big thing. 7 small things
Mhm.
in a row.
Yeah, just relentless.
By Saturday, she was laughing about it. Monday, we were breaking it all down. You do not want to miss it.
Knowing Maya, it is going to be a highly entertaining story of endurance.
He really is. But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Something to mull over while you go about the rest of your day or while you're commuting. Today, we spent all this time analyzing the languages our friends desperately want to learn. From Marcus's intensely practical Spanish to Dan's mysterious secret Finnish, we looked at what we deeply desire. But consider the inverse.
The dark matter of language learning.
Exactly. Imagine if you were offered that exact same magic pill from our first question instant, perfect fluency, starting tomorrow morning. But instead of eagerly grabbing it, you actively refused it for a specific language.
Oh, wow.
You pushed the pill away. What does the language you avoid or the culture you subconsciously shy away from say about your hidden fears?
That is a deep question.
What unexamined biases were driving that refusal? If our wishes are a map to our goals, maybe our refusals are a map to our shadows. Think about it. We'll see you Monday.